Hello, welcome. I'm joined once again by Barry, that guy from SETI Alpha 5. And today we are talking about the most 1980s of all 1980s movies, Commando. Barry.
Indeed, sir. What a glorious film it is, for all the right and wrong reasons.
It's certainly a way of describing a film as glorious. Tell me, when did you first see Commando?
Oh, I was young. It was on TV on a Saturday night. Now, for anybody who's watching who was born after about 1995, I'll say, back in our generation, on a Saturday night, you didn't have X Factor or Britain's Got Talent. You had films. And this was on both BBC and ITV, and they would show things like Die Hard and RoboCop and The Terminator, Rambo. This is where we saw all these films first, because not everybody had a video player. Nobody certainly had a DVD player because they hadn't invented yet. And so our entertainment was stuff like this. And we grew up with it, and it was glorious.
I probably had seen Terminator 2 before I saw this, because this, I think, was an 18 when it came out, which would have meant in 1985 I was not old enough to see it. So I don't think I saw it until like the mid-90s. So even though I called it an 80s movie, I didn't see it till well after that. Like you watch Terminator or Terminator 2 on TV and you think, what else has Arnold Schwarzenegger done? So you start to watch things. You get like Predator and Raw Deal and Red Heat and Red Sonja and Conan, and eventually your path will cross Commando. And I said to you, before we started, and I'll repeat it, this is something that I would describe as the best Arnie film. And if you say that to people, they usually react with a very strange look on their face, like you have been talking craziness for half an hour. But what I mean by that is Terminator, Terminator 2, Predator, these are films that have Arnie in them. An Arnie film is a genre, and it is bombastic action, craziness, ridiculous one-liners, a premise that's insane, generally not well executed on most professional standards, but somehow coming together in a way that will pass an hour and a half very nicely indeed.
It's just an hour and a half of shooting, car chases, things blowing up, stupid humour that doesn't really land, but it kind of does, but in a way that's not supposed to. It was just pure entertainment and escapism, and they do not make films like this anymore because they daren't.
If you watch the very first couple of minutes of it, you'll see what I mean about it not being made well, is that nobody in the right mind would start their film with three sort of supposedly professional hits, although I'll come back to the second one in a bit, and then immediately follow that up with some sort of Disney montage of Arnie feeding deers out of his hand and stuff. It's like, what is the tone you're going for here? And it's just, not only is that you'd have to be bonkers to do that. The tones are so completely antithetical. But then you've got Arnie, who's like this great big plank of wood in the middle of it, and quite literally carrying a tree on one shoulder and a chainsaw on the other hand. Like, how masculine can I be in the first couple of minutes of this film? And then like the stuff going on with him and his daughter, and you're just like, this is so cheesy and cringe. But yeah, just back to the second hit of the three, which is again proving my point of how this is just not made well. I'm talking about the one in the car showroom, which is clearly not from this film. This is not a professional hit. They've just like, well, we had that scene, copy and paste it into here, and it's so bad that you can see the test audiences going, did that guy even die? Because then they cut back after the car drives off to show him dead in the street, so you know that he died, because otherwise what happened to him, while painful, is by no means lethal, which makes it an insane thing to do for a professional hitman.
The thing that gets me is with the first one, where the trash truck turns up and they've got machine guns in the trash truck, and then in the middle of the street in broad daylight they gun the guy down and then they just throw the guns in the back of the trash truck and drive off. I mean, wouldn't the whole neighbourhood have heard and seen this? And he even said, oh, it's not garbage day today. Oh, I missed you. No, you didn't. So, okay, the dialogue is terrible right from the start. The whole setup is stupid. I mean, you know a big hulking dude who, in a car who's just run over another guy and he just drives through the car showroom window. Okay, so there's lots of property destruction, lots of murder, lots of violence, and nobody calls the cops. You've got Bennett with his comically massive radio detonator. Have you seen any strange people in the neighbourhood? Oh yeah, there was this bloke with a huge radio control thing, and the boat just exploded when he went near it.
Because I work in a film equipment workshop, I genuinely believe that remote control was probably the remote control to a camera that they just thought, just hang on to that. So that's why it's probably like this big, and it's a great big aerial like this. But you mentioning about like the hulking guy, that's Bill Duke, who was also in The Predator with Arnie a couple of years after this. But I was watching the first 3 hits, and none of these, not the hitmen or the people dying, look like a commando or look like a military guy, nor are they behaving in a way that looks military. But then I wonder if that's deliberate, because of course it elevates Arnie to this sort of demigod status with this ridiculous Adonis physique of his. Maybe the purpose of it is to just like elevate Arnie above everybody else, but he's supposed to be in a team with these guys, and you've got like what's his name, the Bennett guy, I can't remember the actor's name anymore, who's supposed to be a foil, who's supposed to be an antagonist, a worthy adversary, but of course nobody possibly could for Arnie when he's this great big Austrian oak in the middle of the set. But it's amazing to me that even Bill Duke, who does look the part in Predator, in this film doesn't look the part. And it's like, what have they done? Did he just like seriously buff up in the next 3 years? Because he's like, oh, I might be in another Arnie film and I've got to compete with that.
This was constipated to me. It's just like this throughout the whole film. But the thing was, if I was Vernon Wells, the guy who plays Bennett. I would have been in the gym for like 6 months before this film even started filming, because if I'm going up against Arnie, who's in peak shape, he looks like what he is, a fat old man with a terrible moustache.
And wearing chainmail. Why is he wearing... We know why he's wearing chainmail. All the way through the film, you're like, why is he wearing chainmail? Until he hits that electric thing, and you're like, that's why he's wearing chainmail, because they wanted to do that in the finale. From the 3 hits, then they go to like Arnie's, his cabin in the woods, where the general leaves... The general leaves the cannon fodder to die, and like that, the soldier that they leave with him as the one of the 2 that has lines is clearly in it and survives just long enough to do like crazy lines or line setups for Arnie, and then like the scare at the end when he opens the door and he's like, and then falls on the ground. There was no reason for either of them to be there.
And he's teaching karate. I mean, had experience with that sort of stuff. What he's teaching her is combinations, which is good stuff. But the thing that gets me is like, so he goes to his shack, he gets his gun, he comes back, and there's a bloke sitting with him and he said, the General has got some work for you, and if you've got your dogs back, you've got to do what we say. Wrong. That just sets the tone for the whole film right there.
In terms of the one-word one-liner, this film is got to be the peak of it, because there's the bit where it's a bit after this when he's got Ray Dawn Chong in the car, and she's hysterical for about 5 minutes, just shrilly recounting the entire plot to that point. I don't even know why I'm here, which is like, everybody's wondering why you're still here. She says, are you even going to tell me what's going on? And he says, no. It's just the perfect answer to 5 minutes of shrill hysterics. Right at the start, you do get the motif of this film. He never ever aims, and he never ever misses.
I mean, it's Scooby-Doo logic, isn't it? We'll get to that point in a second as well. But it's like, okay, so the Ripley distributor out of his Jeep, so he still pushes the Jeep uphill, then he runs down. He says, oh, he's going to hit us, he's going to hit us. And then he beats everybody up, and then Bennett shows up as, oh, Bennett, I thought you were dead. No, I'm not. And then the movie just moves like this. It is so quick-paced, because, of course, there's not really a plot as such. It's just a bunch of action scenes connected with some sort of story going on here. I've got to get my daughter back in a certain amount of time, is what it is. But oh god, the guy they got to play Bennett.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good at what he does, which is terrible acting, and it gets worse and worse throughout the whole film. But at least he's memorable.
And I'm not so sure that he's terrible, because I'm in two minds about the scriptwriters. They're either extremely good and are doing really bad really well, or they're extremely bad. Because you talked about Alyssa Milano learning karate at the start, but she never ever uses any of it. So it's like, what was the point of that? The most lethal thing with all the from the hip shooting that he does would actually be his chase down the hill in that car with no control over what happens. Because when that stops, it stops against the, like, it comes hurtling down, bouncing down, and then wham against the ground, and it's just like nobody's getting out of that alive. It just hits with such impact. I'm just like, crikey. You had to have a cut back to the other guy to show that him being in a car accident was bad enough to kill him. But now we're seeing a car accident that almost certainly would kill somebody, and Arnie just like...
It's and then it's quite lovely when the car goes into the roof of the house and he just gets out and goes like that. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, this guy's indestructible, so he's our guy, you know. But the other guy who's really terrible is the guy who's El Presidente. In other stuff, but really good in things like Usual Suspects. The guy's name is Dan Hedaya, I think, and he's a good actor, but he's awful in this film. And he's really awful with the gun as well. Every time he fires, he's like this. He needs some weapons training, mate.
Yeah, his role's awful. What they really should have done is had him in the beginning, like as the guy, like, you know, on a screen or something, like on a laptop nowadays. It'd just be like, "This is the mission, Bennett. Get on with it." And then never have him in it again, because you have to have so much effort to make your bad guy look like there's any sort of stakes for Arnie. He has to be an incredible bad guy, and Bennett's not. And he's also behaving in a way that makes him look scared and weak all the way through. And the other guy, who's just like a politician, is berating him and pointing out how scared and weak he is all the way through. And like I said, the scriptwriters are either brilliant at being bad or just bad, and I can't tell which.
The screenwriter for this movie was the guy who also screenwrote Die Hard, the first one. A guy called Stephen E. D'Souza.
But that film's based on a book, though, in it, Die Hard. I bet this is not based on a book.
No, they just made this up on the fly, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think they even had a script. I think, what looks good? Okay, well, let's do this. But the plot of the film is El Presidente wants Arnie to kill the president of an island called Valverde, I think it's
Valverde.
And he's got 11 hours to do it, and if he doesn't do it, then they're going to kill his daughter.
No. He's got... They don't give him a time limit. The reason he's got 11 hours is because they put him on a plane that's going to take 11 hours. And he gets off the plane, and it'll be 11 hours before they find out. And him getting off the plane, I know it's pre-9/11 and security was a bit different back then, but... just the bit where the stewardess goes, "You have to be in your seat," and he's like, "I'm airsick," and just ignores her. And she doesn't follow him and go, "No, sir, you really have to sit down. We're taking off." And he can just like get from there to the, landing gear, just by ripping open a bit of fabric and then just climbing down onto the landing gear. And
the best bit for me is they put this massive lug who looks like Booker T or something out of wrestling next to him, and he says, "Give me a pillow," bang, kills him, and it says, "Don't disturb my friend, he's dead tired." It's like, oh, fuck's sake. That
is the best line in the film. There are so many lines like that in this film, but that one is the best one. Yeah, he sits next to him, doesn't he? And he just sort of goes like that, and like the guy then breaks the guy's neck, puts a pillow on his face.
Yeah.
"Don't disturb my friend, he's dead tired." And as a teenager, when I first saw this, that was hysterical. I loved that. So I can't, even now I'm like, oh God. But I still appreciate like my initial reaction to it.
Best part for me is when he's on the landing gear and then he jumps into the lake runs back to the airport, and he's bone dry before he's even got out the lake.
The way that shot is the plane takes off and you see the undercarriage of it, and I didn't have the best quality version of it, but I'm like, where's Arnie? You can clearly see he's not there.
Yeah.
And then you see him like what's, I guess, either a dummy or a stunt double being dropped. Then there's like literally another shot of just somebody falling against a blue sky. And then there's the dummy hitting the water. And immediately Arnie's like walking around the edge of the reeds that he lands in. Like he literally, to have done that, he would have bounced in, landed on his feet and walked out the way it's cut. You're just like, they're wasting 0 seconds in this movie. But then they'll have a 3-minute montage of Arnie like robbing a store or just putting his clothes on. It's like you literally wouldn't have 3 wasted frames in him jumping out of an aeroplane, but you'll have 3 minutes of them when he's just like getting grenades out of a bucket.
It's just a very, very oddly edited film. It's a very odd film anyway, because it doesn't really make any sense, but it's done with so much joy and so much fun that you don't notice any of that. And if you compare it with something like, I don't know, Doctor Strange 2, or something that's made in the last 10 years, and you just think, this is no fun to watch, it's kind of boring, it's paced really horribly, the CGI is terrible. You compare that with this, and it's just fun, and it's in and out, 90 minutes done.
Yeah.
I would far rather watch Commando. He runs back into the airport and he tries to find Sully, this little weedy little shit who's supposedly a Navy SEAL as well.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you are skipping the key part, which is another part that proves me right about the script writers. Before they get on the plane, Sully is supposedly the comedy one, but he says and does literally nothing until they get to the airport. Then he makes some crack about, if you're on the plane for 11 hours, we'll have more time with your daughter, which prompts Arnie to say, you're a funny guy, Sully. I'm going to kill you last, which is really important because of what comes afterwards.
The other thing about it is, every bloke in this film is trying to crack onto women. Every conversation, every kind of interaction is like, I've got something you'd really enjoy. And then sitting in the bar saying, I really love trying to pick up women, dealing dodgy passports and stuff. And then he finds Cindy and he said, you fucking bitch, or whatever it is. I'm not going to repeat it, it's horrible, you don't say that to women. It's like, she's the opposite of what you've just called her because she's not giving you the stink eye.
But what you're saying about like how everybody's hitting on somebody is the bit where later on where she's rescuing Arnie from the police truck and pulls alongside and she says like, hi, and the guy leans out and says hi, and then turns back to his partner and says, hooker. What was it? A nicely dressed woman in a nice car, and you go from there to hooker. Well, how?
And then he says, I think she's got something for us. What are you expecting to happen? Did you expect him to do a striptease in the middle of the street or something? But then she does have something for him, which we'll come back to in a minute. She's actually really effective at what she does. And so that's a nice sort of contrast that I quite like. But the women in this film are just treated like crap. There's no other word for it.
But is anybody any more than window dressing? For Arnie, it's just like
Arnie, no.
it's like, yeah, it's just window dressing for Arnie. Everybody's there. You look about right. You look a little bit South American. You can be the president guy. We go, Sully, you're the funny one. Slightly Weasley looking actor, but there's no evidence of him being funny. Like the funniest bit is what Arnie does to him. There's so much of it that's kind of like you're saying about the women, but I'm talking about they are there along with every other character to say a thing to get the response to the thing, which is why Sully's not funny, which is why Bennett's talking nonsense half the time, so it's that other people can react to it, not because it makes any sense. So where did we get to on the plot? We've diverted.
No, I mean, we got from the airport, so he runs back into the airport. Sully tries to proposition Cindy. Cindy tells him to piss off. Then Arnie shows up and says, I've got karate class. You're going to have to miss it. And he rips the seat out of a car. Follow him.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of dialogue, though. Sorry, I'm looking because I wrote this down. He says, a man I trusted for years wants me dead. That's literally the quote. And he's talking about Bennett, which is not true because he didn't trust him because he kicked him out of his unit. So it's literally not true what he's saying. But the reason he says that is so that she can say, I've only known you 5 minutes and I want you dead too. Which is a line that wouldn't work without the setup, even though the setup makes no sense. That's what this film's like all the way through.
To get to the mall, I have never seen so many mall cops in my life. I mean, we've got the mall here in Jackson, it's like 3. And there's like 20 of these guys. And all he's doing is standing there waiting. He says to Cindy, okay, go and distract Sully and bring him over here. All hell breaks loose. All these mall cops come and attack him. He beats the shit out of all of them. And then the guy who's selling dodgy passports, he could have just walked away and not be hurt, but he decides to pull a gun and start shooting everybody. Like, why are you doing this?
Quite a lot of that is terrible, but the mall cop he's like hitting on 2 girls, proving your point, and then he says to them, you want to see me kick some ass or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, and off he goes to like face down Arnie. It's a dreadful line.
Yeah.
Women is set dressing, but the fight when it comes, there are some good bits, like when there's like a pile of mall cops, like there's like 12 of them, you can't even see Arnie, and then they all go flying and he just stands up out of the middle. It is like this biblical moment. It's like, here I am, Arnold Schwarzenegger to save the day. There's a bit in there as well, which I'm sure is test audience added, which is the guy's about to shoot Arnie and she shoves him down the escalator, which again, you'd be like, did he survive that? Because that looks really, really dangerous, like quite possibly could have died. And then I think that they've shot and added as a result of test audiences going, what happened there? Did he survive? Because that's awful if he didn't. They've added like an extra shot of him going, hey lady, or something like that from when he's laying on the ground. It's just, yeah, okay. But Sully sees all this.
He picks up the phone booth, rips it out of the wall and then throws it. It's like, okay, everything is determined to underline the fact that Arnold is just absolutely massive. The copy says, you've won jelly again. Well, they're a fuck. It's like that.
But he doesn't. He doesn't just lift the phone booth off the floor. He lifts the phone booth off the floor with Sully in it, and then lifts it up and throws it down.
And they're into her car again. This is absolutely amazing. So he's chasing a Porsche 911 in like some little shitty open top car that will never keep up with it in 100 years. And he keeps smashing into the back of this Porsche. And the car goes from being damaged to being perfect, to being damaged to being perfect again between shots. And eventually they crash, and Sully rolls over. Arnie just grabs him, and this bloke is like, I don't know, the size of a mouse, picks up and says, where's my daughter? Finds the key to where you need to go next. And this is something else, because every clue he needs is right there.
Like the key literally just drops off of Sully, and it's like, that's the clue. It just fell out of the sky almost. But you have to explain what happens to Sully, because it's the best part of the film.
So Arnie decides that a good thing to do is to interrogate Sully, picks him up by his leg and dangles him over the side of the cliff and says, I want to know where my daughter is. I'll take you to where I'm supposed to be cook. And then he said, I already know, here's the key. Do you want to do the line?
He says, hey, Sully, you know I said I'd kill you last? And Sully's like, yeah, you did. He said, I lied. And then he let go, and then you see him dropping into the... It's like, yeah, that's like a cold-blooded... It's a cold-blooded murder if you want to look at it like that. But because this is an Arnie film and not a film where logic is a thing... It's just amazingly good. It's amazingly good. As a teenager, when I first saw this, I was just like, that is the coolest thing, not only that I've ever seen, and I'd seen Terminator 2 at this point, remember, when I'd seen the guy walk through the wall, so like it was pretty cool. But it's also the coolest thing I've ever heard. And it's both of those things at the same time. It's a wonderful moment of cinema.
The best bit as well after that is he's got Sully's car. So she says, oh, you don't have a car now. He shoves it over with no effort, and the car is back to normal, and there's no dents on it whatsoever.
It's the car that he literally ran off the road and smashed into like 3 times and pushed up a cliff face until it flipped on its side.
Just glared at it and it repaired itself. Please don't beat me up anymore. And then she says, what did you do with Sully? I let him go.
That whole sequence is just so great. It's so great. That's the one bit I think where it's like the script writers are just like pissing themselves laughing, like, this is so good, we've nailed this is going to be absolutely gangbusters. When people see it, they're going to love this, and they just got it. So, which is why I don't know if they're brilliant or terrible, and they either were brilliant all the way through and dumbed down, or they were terrible and got lucky. But either way, that sequence just works so beautifully.
The best bit for me is that I watched it with my mum. Now, by this point, my dad had passed away. I would have loved to have heard his take on this film. It probably would have been F-bomb after F-bomb and said that's bloody stupid or that's ridiculous or whatever. But I watched it with my mum. My mum was saying, I really enjoyed this. You can stop the bus for me. But my mum was she had a very good sense of humour. She was very sharp.
I think you either get it or you don't. It's got something like 6.7 on IMDb, which I think is probably people that are sort of my take on it, which is that's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not appreciating my teenage take on it, which is that this is wonderful. This is like the magic of cinema, as it should be when you're a teenage boy. It's just like, why have I not got 100 movies like this that I can watch? There's a couple of things. Like Arnie is really awkward around people. Like really awkward around people. All his stuff with Alyssa Milano is really awkward. When you're watching it, you're just like, these guys don't work well together. He doesn't work well with Ray Don Chong at all. Like when he crashes the car, before he goes to get Sully, he sort of grabs her by the arms like this, like it's really stiff, says, are you all right? And she says, no. And he says, you'll be all right, and then walks off. He's such a plank that there's a line in this when he's trying to convince her to help him, which is a little bit earlier than this, and he says of his daughter, he says, they're going to kill her, which is a line which is also word for word in Star Wars when Luke is trying to convince Han to rescue Princess Leia, but Mark Hamill says, they're going to kill her, and Arnie says, they're going to kill her. Just like, he's so awkward around people. Whenever he has to interact with a human being, it's so uncomfortable, but it still works. I think over the years he's got so much better, but in this it's like he really is like the most socially awkward human being on the planet, but still, because he's like Mr. Universe or whatever, can't deal with the fact that he's not good at something, so he'll do all of like the family moments and all the caring, compassionate moments, and you're just like, dude, you could have just basically bailed out of that car and run after Sully and not had that really awkward interaction with, what's her name, I can remember the act. Yeah, I can't remember Cindy. Yeah, and not had that Cindy interaction, and it would have just been a little bit less. He's really awkward, but he is all the way through really awkward with human beings.
The less awkward thing was Terminator, though, because in the first Terminator he only had like 15 or 16 lines. Now, I'm one of those that saw Terminator 2 before Terminator 1, but I prefer the first Terminator to the second one.
Yeah, I probably do as well.
If you watch Commando the Barbarian, which is before two of these films, he's very good, actually. He's good at that interaction, especially with people like Grace Jones.
It's funny you mentioned Terminator, because there's a bit in Terminator where it's not Arnie at all. It's like a dummy of his head. And I'm watching this film, and I'm looking at Arnie's performance, and sometimes I genuinely think it's not him. It's just the dummy of his head from Terminator that they've repurposed for the scene. I don't know. Like I say, there's some magic there that it just all works anyway, despite, or perhaps it works because he's so awkward. It just adds to the comedy of it.
Everything's just so awkward and clunky, and it's kind of like this works, but it just shouldn't do. But this is meant to be funny, but it's not, and all that sort of thing. It kind of works in the reverse way that it's meant to.
Yeah.
But there's another film the director of this movie made called. The director is Mark L. Lester. He made a film called Showdown with Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren. It's an awful film. The dialogue is almost exactly the same. Brandon Lee gets into a fight with this guy, and then he's saying, "You have the right to be dead," and then blows him up. And I'm not making this up. And then the dialogue from Dolph Lundgren is literally grunts and all this sort of business. It's worth watching just to see how not to make a film.
Isn't it weird that this film is so good? Because if you look at Mark Lester, his career, so many of his films are ranked in the 2.3, 3.0 out of 10 on IMDb. It's like there's nothing on his IMDb other than this that is in any way regarded positive. It's just all the films he's ever made have been terrible. But how did he get this job then?
Probably cheap and it was available.
Yeah, but how did he make it work when he never made anything else work?
I think it's because he had good people around him. Like, I think it was Joel Silver who produced this, who also produced things like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, that sort of stuff. So it was kind of him holding it together, I think. But yeah, he as a director is not good. And then we get to the scene when they get to the motel.
Before you talk about the there is just one thing. I've interrupted you about a dozen times, so I'm sorry about that. We're talking about the runtime of this film. It's Sully's death is literally directly the middle of this film. It is right in the middle of the film. So all the stuff before is the setup to the rampage that is the second half of this film. But it all starts. That's the point at which it all starts.
It just doesn't let up from that point onwards. But this is the point where they have to get the next clue, and they go to the motel. Then Cook comes in. They have a massive fight, and there's a couple in the next room.
Yeah.
Gets Cindy to trick him into the room. They start smashing the room to pieces.
It's worse than that, because he doesn't just get Cindy to trick her into the room. He literally rips her clothes open, and it's like,
yeah.
Like, it was completely unnecessary anyway. But then when they crash through the wall. What happens when they go through the wall?
So he kicks the guy through the door into the next room, where freeze frame this, because I didn't notice this the first time. If you freeze frame it, she is pegging him, and the video here. I am not making this up. I was laughing my arse off. How could they have not heard them destroying this room next door and firing gunshots and stuff? Arnie then picks him up by the bollocks, throws him against the wall, and she's going like this while bearing all. And he pulls a gun and says, "Fuck you, asshole." Click. And then Arnie comes up with another genius like, "Fuck you, asshole."
Well, there's two things that are obviously terrible about it. One is Ray Dawn Chong again is like, "Oh, these guys eat too much red meat. This is such macho." Like, she's got to make all these comments all the way through that are awful. But it's done with such gusto. Bill Duke is like, got the gun and he's got him cold. He's like, "Fuck you, asshole." And then, "Fuck you, asshole," when the gun just it's done with such gusto you can't help but admire it. But what happens is, again, the clue to the next part just like drops out of nowhere, and it turns out that she's a pilot, and she recognises on a receipt that he's got that he's been buying aviation fuel from a place that she knows is just down the road.
How convenient.
If you didn't want Ray Dawn Chong in this film, she's quite annoying for the most part. If you didn't want her in this film, you could have just gone, he's a commando. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that he's also like a helicopter pilot or something. So he could have recognised that himself, and you wouldn't have had her saying all this stuff. But they literally just wanted her there to like scream and make comments as scenes go on.
They need that male-female dynamic, don't they? As wooden as it is.
They try to drop hints that there's a thing between them, but they're so awkward that it never looks like there's a thing between them, or ever could be.
It'd be better off without her full stop, but then you wouldn't have the wonderful stuff later on. But the thing that gets me is, right, okay, so he's just killed him violently and impaled him with a table or leg or whatever it was. All of this is on that video camera that's in the background.
I don't think they want to share that video footage with the police. Or anyone else.
I think they just went back to shagging straight after that. It's like, oh, okay. But wouldn't that technically be a snuff film that they just make somebody's just died in the middle of the film?
Predates YouTube though, so where's the market for it? It predates the internet. How did you share snuff films when we didn't have the internet?
It raises more questions than it answers though. That's another thing with this film. It's like, well, okay, so it just very happens to be convenient that he's got this receipt in his car. Okay, so we've got to go there. And find loads of tanks and weapons and all sorts of stuff. So El Presidente is apparently planning a coup, but why would he be planning it on American soil when it should actually be on the island itself? And then he helps her into the office and says, here's some latitude and longitude, which just happens to be hanging on the wall. That could be anything. It could be anywhere. But it said, this island, we've got to go here. We've got to go here now. Oh, that's okay. This is a picture of a float plane, and we can use that to get there. Well, that could be anything as well. There's no logic to the progression of the plot.
There's two bits when they're getting on the plane which are just magic, Commando magic, which is the fact that the plane won't start until he thumps it, and then it starts. And then there's the guys that come up on the Jeep, and he's got like an Uzi, and they're literally a mile away. There's no danger of him ever hitting them, but they're shooting at him. It's like pinging off the plane all around him, and he just gets the Uzi and goes like that, and then they fall and die, and the Jeep goes in the water. And it's all completely gratuitous and silly, but it is magic. But we have skipped over, by getting to the plane bit, we skipped over the bit where they rob the gun shop, and then the aftermath of that, which is a completely unnecessary aside, but it does get us to 90 minutes precisely in movie runtime. Yep. So it's completely necessary in that regard, but not necessarily for any part of the story. I think that they've stolen another thing from Terminator here. I think that they've stolen the sound library, because I think that when he drives it's not, what's it called? He drives the thing through the wall, bulldozer. He drives a bulldozer through the wall, and I think the sound effects on that are the same sound effects that Kyle Reese has when he's parked at the side of the road and they're doing building work behind him. So I think they repurposed Terminator sound effects as well as dialogue in this, which is...
If you remember in the Terminator, he actually goes into a gun shop and he's getting shotgun shells and stuff. He says, you can't do that. Wrong. Same setup. He decides to ram raid an army surplus store. Wouldn't there be an alarm going off and just sirens turning up instantly? He opens up the back door. Now, I'm pretty familiar with that sort of thing over here. You cannot buy a rocket launcher or a law rocket or anything like that. They just don't allow you to have stuff like that. A rifle, handgun, no problem, knife, whatever. You cannot buy mines, you cannot buy grenades, and you cannot buy a rocket launcher. It just wouldn't be allowed.
But it's an Arnie movie, so it works. It's allowed. Yeah. You're allowed anything in an Arnie movie. I'm surprised he doesn't get one of those laser guns from Terminator and just have that as well. He's got everything else.
But then, of course, he's a bit surprised that the police tell him, don't move. Yeah. So he's put in the back of the Black Mariah. And that's when we get the wonderful scene with her, and they say, hooker. It's like, what? How do you reach this conclusion?
She pulled up alongside and she's a woman. That's the Arnie movie logic, so it works fine. But she does the thing with the rocket launcher that they use again in Falling Down, though, doesn't she?
Yeah, and then she fires it backwards.
Yeah.
Because she's not read the instructions, although apparently she has, according to the line. That is actually a brave move on her part, because that rocket launcher could have taken out that van completely and just killed everybody.
As escape or rescue plans, whatever you want to call it, go, it is lunacy. You would never fire a rocket launcher at the thing that's got the person you're trying to rescue in. You write yourself into the corner. You've shown the rocket launcher, the Chekhov's rocket launcher, which would only be in an Arnie film. You've got to use that rocket launcher now. So... Yeah, she blows up the police van, which again, you have to have a shot of the people surviving, because otherwise she's just committed murder again on Arnie's behalf.
The other thing about it is this poor general who turned up at the start keeps following him around all these destroyed places where he's been and just murdered everybody. He said, do you think it's Matrix? Yeah, I think it is. What are you expecting? The Third World War. Does he just travel around the world apologising for Arnie and how many people he's killed and blown up?
It's a great line, though. What are you expecting? World War III. It's a great line, and delivered with the same enthusiasm that much of this film is delivered with by those that seem in on the joke at any rate. Why is he not doing anything? Because he's following around with all these people, but he's not helping. He's not putting two and two together. He's not giving people a heads up like the Coast Guard when they're taking the plane across the water. Like,
yeah, he turns up with his unit at the end. I'd like to start a unit again, John. So clearly he knew where he was going. So why didn't you just arrange for Arnie to be transported there to start with?
Because she basically disappears for this part because she can't be running around the island shooting people. So her one job in the last half hour of the movie is to phone him and give him the coordinates. So it's her that tells the general where they are. Though you would have thought that eventually the reports of gunfire, rocket launchers, mines going off, grenades exploding, and jeeps flying through the air and stuff like that goes on like an episode of the 18 dialed up to 50. All of that you would think would probably attract somebody's attention anyway, but it is her that phones him in. It's her one job.
And of course we've got the wonderful part with Bill Paxton where he's the radar operator. They're just taking off from the plane and he says you need to avoid this area because it's like a target range or something, and it's where we drop bombs and missiles. And Bill Paxton's on the screen for about 30 seconds. And holy shit, you can tell it's a green screen because you see the outline of him against the window of the aircraft. Yeah, it's funny.
It must have been his first role.
But then when we get to the island, of course Arnold's got to be shirtless.
He's in his Speedos that are this big. He's the size of a 200-year-old oak tree, and his Speedos are this big. It's bordering on obscene and utterly pointless because he rows to the island and immediately changes. He may as well have just rode there in his clothes.
But again, you don't get that because again we've got another montage and he's gearing up and he's putting up
drawing on himself.
On his war paint. And then he just strides into the camera like, I'm the big I am.
Which is the same pose he does at the beginning, though, isn't it? Beginning, tree, chainsaw. At the end, rocket launcher and, like, whatever, like the rifle or whatever he's got in the other hand. So it's exactly the same pose. As George Lucas would say, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
But then everything starts to explode and we see the same building blow up about 5 times. Because apparently they haven't got the budget. Apparently all the budget went to Arnie. So he's running away. He's planted all these mines. And everything explodes, it's glorious. And there's these dummies that are just standing there. Did you run out of budget for stuntmen or something? There's just these dummies standing there while everything just goes up in fire. It's beautiful.
And they show the thing from like 4 very slightly different angles. And it's the same dummies, it's the same building, and it's the same everything, but it's like boom, boom, boom. It is great, and it's all terrible. Once you've seen it, you just can't get over like Arnie with a machine gun standing there just like moving the machine gun side to side, and interspersed there's all these cuts of stuntmen going and dropping down dead, usually with nothing like a squib or anything like that. They just go and down they go.
But it's pads on the ground that launch these guys into the air. You can see the pads launching them, and literally everybody dies who he shoots at, whether he's aiming the gun at them or not. I mean, he could have just thrown a box of bullets at them and it would have just hit and made the same difference. And he keeps changing guns like 10 seconds or something until somebody throws a grenade at him and, oh my God, Arnie's hurt. He's actually got a bit of a cut in his side.
He shrugs that off.
So he goes into a shed. Yeah. And this happens in every bloody action film of that time. They surround the shed and they'll start shooting. This has never, ever worked. They did it in the second Die Hard. The bad guys surround the shed and start blasting, and he just comes out swinging. And for some reason, the film decides to become a horror movie because he swings up with an axe, he slices someone's nads off, and then he lobs somebody's arm off with an axe. It's like, what?
Yeah, but that was the bit where I thought, actually, this is going to go a different way. Because it's just been mindless gunplay to that point. And then he goes in the shed and he's hurt, and he apparently, I guess he must have finally run out of the million bullets that he was carrying somewhere on his person. And so what's he going to do? And he gets like the saw blades, and like the first one that like scalps the dude, and you just see a few frames of it, but it's like, it looks horrific. You're just like, oh my word. And he's like throwing saw blades, and then like you say, he comes out and he's got like a fork that he hits one dude with, and then he hits another guy with an axe, which is really awkward because he swings it like that, which looks like it wouldn't get any sort of, it would hurt because it hits him in the nads, but you're like, that doesn't look like the way to swing an axe. Like, there's the one shot where they had like the one arm. It's the only bit other than the slight scalping, which is a few frames. Like the one bit of gore is he hacks somebody's arm off, and he's like, but then immediately picks up the dude's gun, and you're back to just with extras dying everywhere. And I just thought, you had an opportunity there to do something a bit different, and you only kept it up for about 2 minutes. But it was fun while it lasted.
And I'll tell you what, it picks up that, it's not an M4, it's a heavy machine gun, it's an anti-tank machine. He lifts it up with one arm, like Sly does in second Rambo. You try picking one of those things up with 2 arms, let alone firing the bloody thing. It reminds you of the bit in Where Eagles Dare, but he's got the 2 machine guns. Dad said there's no bloody way you can do that, you'd have to have arms like a gorilla.
Which Arnie does, to be fair.
But he just blows. You just see heads of roses flying off everywhere and people just flying backwards into. All the while, his daughter's managed to get out of the room, finally, that she's locked up in. Bennett's not happy. And, I love hearing your little soldiers talking tough. If Bennett was here, if Mate was here, he'd laugh too. So this is just corny dialogue, but then he smashes through the door, smashes through the window, and when he's leaping over the railing to go after his daughter, you can see his arm going like this. It's like, yeah, you're really not in shape.
He's clearly never been in shape. He didn't work out for this film. Like, they said, you're playing a Commando. He's like, cool. Not cool, I better get a personal trainer then, hadn't they? There wasn't any of that. It's just like, yeah, cool. I think I can be a Commando for sure. The shoot 'em up bit is what it is. The squib guy earned his money in this film. He was there for, like, late at night lining all those things up. So he earned his money for sure. But the stunt coordinators were napping on the job because the fight with Bennett that Schwarzenegger has is really just... It makes you wonder why they bothered. They must have watched it back and gone, this is not really a fitting finale for the carnage that we have done to this point. We've smashed up cars and airports and armoured police trucks. We've had rocket launches in residential areas. We've exploded every single square inch of this island. And now we're going to have 2 guys face off, one of which has been hitting the burgers. And it's just awful.
It's a bit shit.
It's so anticlimactic.
The part without presenting even worse.
Yeah.
Because we were talking earlier that the actor's really terrible with a gun, and he keeps going like this when he's firing a gun, and Arnie's shooting at him from his hidey hole, and you see things. But wouldn't there be bullet holes everywhere all over the interior of this house, and nothing is touched? There's literally no damage whatsoever, apart from a couple of bits of crockery on side.
But that was probably an expensive building. Whereas you can set squibs in the flower beds all day long. You can't.
Yeah.
It's probably a historic building or something as well, because it's got that sort of look about it. The bit where Bennett smashes through the wall thing is clearly a wall that they've built out of paper. So it's like, that stuff you can smash up, but it's also for us like what looks, for all intents and purposes, like a sort of Victorian era stately home. It has a massive industrial steam plant underneath it for some reason.
It looks like the engine room of the Enterprise in the J.J. Abrams film.
It does, doesn't it?
As I say, El Presidente gets a pretty good death because it's shot in the chest with a shotgun, flies back through the window, covered in blood, and falls to the ground from the first floor, which is pretty cool. The
stuntman earned his money that day, and then they gave him the day off when Bennett was fighting Schwarzenegger.
Oh god, that final fight is just it's terrible in a way that this film is terrible.
It's somehow fitting.
Yeah, Bennett managed to shoot him in the shoulder, and Arnie said, "Oh, go with the chicken shit gun." And bear in mind, Arnie's still absolutely ripped, and he's got a knife in his hand, and there's no way he'd be able to lift his arm if he hadn't actually been hit in the shoulder. And Bennett comes out with an absolutely genius line, which William Shatner and Nicolas Cage could never hope to come out with in that way. I'm gonna kill you now. So, this is terrible. Who told you to act like this?
He has Matrix Schwarzenegger done. Like, he's got the gun. He's got no reason not to just shoot him. And Schwarzenegger goads him a little bit, like, come on, you want to take me man on man, don't you? And then he has like almost a minute's worth of psychological breakdown while he's like, I can take you, Matrix, I can take you. Inexplicably, like a little bit like me going to Mike Tyson, yeah, I could take you. I'd give it a go. I could take you. It's just never going to happen. Just shoot the dude. You're the one with the gun.
I saw a similar experience in a kung fu class once. There was this guy, and he'd done TKD and karate and stuff like that. He came up to my sifu and he said, I bet I could take you. And the sifu said, are you sure about this? Do you really think that this is a good thing to do? So this guy said, oh, I've got a black belt in this and I've got a black sash in that. I'm like, okay. So they started sparring. And the sifu, his name was Riker, put him on the floor in 10 seconds because he just saw what he was doing. And I've seen that happen for real, and it's quite funny when it does. And the guy was like, you cheated me. He wandered off back to the changing room. Like, what were you expected to happen? You know, the guy's been doing martial arts for 30.
On the subject of unpredictable, unexpected outcomes, what do you think Bennett expected to happen? And I can guarantee you, I'll put £1 million on it that it wasn't what happened. He would never have predicted what happened.
The thing that gets me is that when they're in a grapple, when they're holding each other's faces against the furnace, they're evenly matched. But how? Arnie's got like 4 times the muscle mass. This is not possible, surely. And actually, you can hear at one point the director in the background saying, switch, and then they move positions. So Arnie punches him, he goes back into the electric generator, so now we know why he's wearing chainmail.
Yep.
And all of a sudden this dude's like 4 times stronger than he was before. And he's going, oh, do you want to feel good? Walloping his back and got him on foot. What is going on?
Supercharged. Everyone knows that once you hit electricity, you're supercharged. That's the Arnie movie logic. How could it be anything else that happens? Tell me how Bennett dies.
Well, we get yet another montage because Arnie decides to make his big comeback and he's going... then wrenches a pipe off the wall. As Bennett says something like, I'm going to shoot you in the balls. Pulls the pipe off the wall and just throws it through and through the boiler behind him. So, how could you throw something with that force?
Arnie can do it. We've established Arnie is like Adonis. He's literally a Greek god. I mean, quite clearly, you can have any amount of piping that you like and throw it at a furnace and it won't go through the furnace. But in Arnie movie logic, it will. It will go through Bennett and still have the momentum to go through the furnace as well, so that steam can come out of Bennett's chest, at which point he can go, let off some steam, Bennett. Which...
Oh my days.
As a line that can only work if we've seen Bennett being a hothead and then people are going, calm down, you're getting all steamed up, to set it up. But we didn't have any of that. So the line let off some steam, Bennett really doesn't make any sense apart from the truly wonderfulness of, like, only Hector, only Achilles. These are the only people that can do the feat of ripping a pipe off the wall and throwing it with that sort of force that it will go through a human and a furnace, and he can just, with a great big chest cannon with steam coming out of the top of it. Only in an Arnie film. It's wonderful. Nobody at the start of the movie could go, I know how this film's going to end.
No, I mean, it's a cartoon come to life, it has to be said.
Yeah.
But Alyssa Milano's, she's like a little girl and she's been watching all this happen. Would she not have severe psychological trauma after seeing her dad butchering hundreds of people? You probably need to go and see somebody and talk about, how this has affected you, because otherwise you're going to grow up to be Alyssa Milano. She is now.
Poor Alyssa Milano was traumatized by the experience of making Commando, but her character is an 80s child. Yeah. We were tougher. We survived those things.
Yes, we were.
We didn't need counselling. You most blatantly would. It's like, imagine the bit at the end, like the general said, did you leave anything for us? And he says, only corpses. And like he's walked his daughter through like just the fringes of the chaos, and she'd have been like, where's the rest of that man? Why is he in pieces? Where's the rest of that man? It would be horrifically traumatizing.
Yeah, it's an action movie. This is fun.
If you were given the straight up choice of Commando, Running Man, and Demolition Man, which one would you watch?
Ooh. I think Demolition Man's probably more intelligent than the other one. It is more intelligent than the other two. Commando's the most entertaining of the three. I think Demolition Man's got the most to say as well about the way that the government is trying to control people and all that sort of thing. So I'll probably go for Demolition Man.
I think I would as well. I just... we've talked about Bill Paxton in Commando, and it's like probably his first role, but he still gives it gusto. I think he's like, oh, they're gone, sir, when they disappear off the radar. It's like it's like he's fully committed to the bit, as so many are in this film, but they all are dreadful. And Demolition Man, by contrast, Nigel Hawthorne is great. It's Nigel Hawthorne, isn't it?
Yes.
He's great. I think Sandra Bullock is a lot of fun in it as well. Stallone is Stallone, and Wesley Snipes is having the time of his life. When that works on screen, there's magic in it. And I think that Commando, I think, gets that like a 7 out of 10. That it's stupid, terrible movie, but has that magic that just works.
But it was great. It was great fun to watch. Again, I've not seen it for a little while. It was terrific fun to talk about it, as much as it's dreadful. And it's crap, but it's good crap. I think it's probably the nicest way to put it. And you end up thinking, well, it's entertaining, it's fun. I'll take it.
It's from the 1980s, and it shows. And you could never get away with some of the things they did in it today, unless you happen to be Trey Parker and Matt Stone. You're just not going to get away with it. And I think that there's a little bit of magic in that, like the naivety, the innocence of the cocaine-fueled 80s. It seems completely incongruous, but that's what I take from it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the director had several lines of coke on set, and he was generally taking them because there's no other way to have made this film. I wouldn't change a frame of the movie. I mean, okay, it's bad, but at least it's entertainingly bad. Yeah.
You can't ask for more than entertaining. There's movie magic in trash.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way there's entertainment in... it's pretty... You read it, you edited it for me, and you said, you need to change this, you need to change that, and I took that on board. But, it's still pulpy, but I still enjoyed doing it. And apparently somebody else did, because the second one comes out in 6 weeks. So,
nice. Wow, excellent.
I'm going to send the third one off this week, I think.
Wow. It's going to be a whole series. How many is your goal, or are you just like, no, Andy McNabb can do 20, I can do 20?
I'm not going to do that. Maybe 4 or 5, and that's it. Because you want to leave people wanting more. You don't want to make dozens and dozens and dozens, because it just becomes boring, and then how do you come up with a plot that's different from the others and all that sort of stuff. So 4 or 5 will do me.
Yeah, I still quite like... I'm not up to date with Jack Reacher. I read about the first 10, and I was kind of like, these are very samey, very formulaic, but they are a book you can read without much thought. I don't think you want your stuff to fall into the read and not think about it category, which is why you do the thing where there's like different genres for each one, which is same characters, right? Or at least some crossover, but different genres.
That's right. So the third one's a techno thriller, and then the idea for the fourth one is it's more of a terrorist threat. I don't know what the fifth one's going to be, but it's going to be a different thing every time. It's got to be a different kind of setup, because otherwise you just end up writing the same thing over and over, and that just becomes boring.
I'll wrap things up by saying that if you're watching on my channel, go and subscribe to Barry's channel and buy his book, which will be better linked at his channel than mine, probably because I always forget. I always say I'm going to put the links in and then I always forget. And if you're watching on Barry's channel, then you should definitely come and subscribe to my channel, because damn, I should have thought of a better reason than because. On that note, I will leave you to your gardening, farming, or whatever it is you're being called to. Thank you once again for your time. And next time we'll have to talk about Demolition Man or something.
Oh, I look forward to it. I'll let you know when I'm free. Take it easy.
Take care. See you later on. Subscribe to both.